Job performance reviews are completely pointless. Well, I shouldn't say that they're completely pointless. They do serve a point. But that point is just to explain to you, to get you in the mindset to accept that whatever you are hoping for in terms of a raise or a promotion, well, that's not going to happen. But that's because, and then the job performance review fills in the blanks for how you can lower your expectations for what you should expect from your employer. The last time I got a job performance review, I was given, I think it was 4.25 out of 5. And there were no negative comments on my review. There was nothing that was said that was something I could improve. There was nothing that I could act on or that related to anything that I had done. And so when I asked, well, this is all pretty positive, why am I only getting 4.25? I mean, if there's nothing negative on my review and there's 5 total possible points, then shouldn't I be getting the 5, as there's no room for, and that was actually what came back as well. We want to leave room for improvement. Well, what improvements? What is it that I can improve? See, that's not actually listed. There's no room for improvement listed. Or rather, there's no actions that I can take that would cause such an improvement. So it's just leaving this ambiguous room for improvement. But what that really is that the whole system looks ridiculous if you give every 5s to everyone. If you realize that everyone who's participating in this is really doing the best they can, is really participating in this at a level that is beyond your expectations, that even if you said, well, I have a certain set of expectations and you're not meeting those, or you are meeting those. Well, that's very limited because that's just one person and their encounter. So sometimes you get job performance reviews from someone that you have a conversation with maybe once a year. I've gotten a job performance review from someone that I had spent in one-on-one time a grand total of an hour and a half in an 18-month period, and yet I got a job performance review. Well, how exactly, what is their expectation? What are they measuring? They don't really know. None of these bosses or managers are really that invested in your life to have a clear idea of where you're meeting these expectations or not. What does happen is that occasionally you pop up for having made a mistake, done something they don't like, and then they remember you, and then they get to say, remember that time where you made a mistake? So that's what's happening here, is you at some point or another made a mistake, which is a bit of a sham because, I might myself be aware that they made a mistake, but I don't have the option of rating them. Well, I mean, maybe sometimes you rate your boss, but mostly it's the other way. So, and would I even hold it against them for having made such a mistake? All they're basically saying is that I'm human. If they're looking for, employees that don't make any mistakes, no, I would say, they should turn to AI, but AI makes lots of mistakes. And really, in the universe in which we live, the idea that you cannot make a mistake or you don't make a mistake isn't possible, because what constitutes a mistake is usually amounts to a lack of institutional support. So if there were a very good quality assurance program, if there are better training programs, better tools, better processes, systems that weren't designed to create these errors in the first place, or were designed to find them and fix them, or depending on how this whole thing is defined, whatever you're doing, it can be defined to basically so that a mistake is not possible to avoid, that you basically have no choice. You will move forward, and because you are left in a position without much support, sure, of course you're going to make mistakes, because your system is designed for it. It's exactly the result then that's the system you're participating in, and you're doing the best you can, and in fact you're avoiding a lot of things that are pitfalls, and you become aware of this. But because it's kind of like expecting to drive down a dirt road that hasn't been maintained and has lots of holes in it, and not expect to have a jostle in the car, and then when there is a jostle, despite avoiding 5 other potholes, oh wait, there was a bump, I'm gonna have to mark you down for that. this idea of how expectations are made and what is an expectation, it's very ambiguous. It's very blurry, because when people actually write those things down for you and say, hey, I want you to do this exact thing. I want you to accomplish this thing. And you accomplish it. Maybe there were some, bumps along the way, but you got there. You persevered, you got through the mistakes, you got through it, and then you came to the right point in the end. So if it were a clear expectation for a particular task, but it's not usually tied to that. It's tied to these sort of ambiguous concepts for what makes success. What is success? That's not even necessarily clearly defined. And even when it is defined, it may not be defined realistically or in a way that is consistent with how it's defined in other cases or with other people. A boss at the top, the CEO, lays off 10,000 people and then says, oh, we overhired, or we made some mistake, which is why this is necessary, or we're not delivering by performance. And those same people who are often immune to the consequences of their actions are the ones that are passing down this culture that says we need to be critical. And what's the point of all that? It is, again, to cause you to lower your expectations from the company, that all of those things that you want, things that advance yourself, such as more money or a better position or other kinds of benefits, all of those things come at the cost of the company or the agency. So it would be better for the company, for your employer, if those things didn't happen, and even better still if you didn't expect them. So they put you into this impossible position. Superman could come in for a job performance review, and they would say, well, okay, I think we're going to be giving you a 4 out of 5 here. And Superman's like, well, why would I get a 4 out of 5? I literally saved the world. And the people say, well, actually 4 out of 5, that meets expectations. To do 5, that's actually exceeds expectations. And we honestly expected you to save the world. So that's not really exceeding our expectations. So you come into this workplace and you do so much, you invest so much of yourself into it, going far beyond what people really have any reasonable business to expect from you. Whether that is in small moments or large, where you're putting yourself into your work, and those moments go unnoticed. And instead, it's just, again, to sort of strip you down and, and knock the fight out of you. I had a manager who, there was several categories. One of them was technical expertise. Keep in mind I was in tech support. And the other was leadership. I wasn't actually a supervisor, but nonetheless, I'd had the opportunity to help other people and to do my best there. And he said, well, you've done pretty well in both regards. And I had a lot of, accolades in those areas. And, but I'm not going to give you the top score for both. So you get to pick. Which one do you want me to mark you down for as having a 5? And the other one's going to be, a 4. So it was just to maintain this idea of being fair between a lot of different people. Because if you just said everyone was 5, everyone's doing great here. Everyone is really putting their heart and soul in this and really moving this company forward. I think this is a great team. I'm going to give everyone 5. Well, then what would be the point of the performance review? So, in essence, performance review by its very nature requires that the employers mark you down for some reason or another, otherwise it would have 0 point at all. But if it didn't exist, then you might think, well, what should I expect from salary? What should I expect from, from my career? And so they have to put that in there, because if it didn't exist, then you wouldn't know what to expect. And so it's a way for the company to kind of tone down your expectations for those things and also tell you why you shouldn't expect, all of these nice things. I've supervised and managed employees myself. And I ran into this with my management. Well, they would ask me, how is everyone doing? I would say they're doing great. Well, can't you find some way that they could improve? Well, yeah, let's talk about that. So how can people improve? Well, you know what? People improve every single day. So whether this is an annual performance review or a daily one, every day someone's going to find a way to improve. And of course, we're going to communicate as a manager or supervisor how people can improve. But the fact that they have room to improve, as my, leaving room for improvement, that doesn't mean they're not doing their best. That doesn't mean they're not doing fantastic. Everyone has room for improvement. If you didn't have room for improvement, you would be dead. So everyone is improving, and of course there's room for improvement, but the idea that there's room for improvement is justification for marking you down is absurd. It's all theater. You look at these things, well, they come up with all these factors, how to judge people. Well, your quality. Well, did you do the right thing the right way? And no one is ever going to do the right thing the right way all of the time, and sometimes it's not even appropriate or desired. We're not automatons. If you were trying to get just, a series of these sort of automated recordings to do things, or you could get things to just completely automate a job, but you don't want that. People don't want that. There's a reason why there's a person sitting there, because there's always something unexpected. That no matter how automatic the process might seem, there's always a possibility that something goes wrong. This is why driverless cars don't make any sense, because you cannot predict everything that's going to happen on the road. So you need someone to be in that position as a human being, capable of the amazing calculations a human mind is capable of, to make the right determinations in those cases. So that's why you want people to have that flexibility, so they're not always doing exactly what they're programmed to do, that they are actually exercising their judgment. I had a case where this guy wanted to return a $17 case, and according to policy he wasn't allowed to. So instead of giving up and deciding it wasn't worth his time, he instead called us every single day to return this case, even though we had to tell him no every single time. And he would call us again and again and again, 3 or 4 times a day at least. Can I return the case? Can I return the case? Even though we told him no every time, he kept calling. And it was an amazing amount, demonstration of persistence. And finally, I went to my boss and said, for all of the amount of time we spent on the phone with him and our salaries, the things that we're paid hourly, as little as it is, it's way more than $17. So for the company's sake, it actually makes much more sense to just give him his $17 so he stops calling us, and we can service other customers who are actually trying to pay us money, as opposed to this guy who's probably just going to write a bad review. So having that flexibility to understand that the rules aren't always the right thing to do in every circumstance is exactly why you have human employees to begin with. And then you go into concepts like, well, productivity. How productive are you? How are you able to follow up and complete things? Well, and there's a kind of a funny thing too, because there's this idea, well, we just go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. You don't stop, don't break, don't smile, don't talk to your coworkers, don't do any of this stuff. Just go. You're doing a good job if you're just going. Well, that doesn't really work either, because sometimes we need a moment to consider, and then it's actually thrown as in conflict with ideas of cooperation, of this whole, why do they want people to return to work, and so they get the environment with their coworkers. But then when you're in the environment with your coworkers, then they don't want you to talk to them. So it's catch-22. But the truth is that we don't do the best just going in a straight line. But sometimes we need a moment to stop and reflect. We need to think about things, because it's pretty easy for people in those situations to do things that make a situation much, much worse. And you need people to be able to stop and contemplate, so they're not just a robot programmed to do what they're told to do. They need to have some awareness of their situation, to not just discount. I mean, can you imagine if all of the 911 callers had no discretion whatsoever and should just immediately call someone a prank, or sent the police to every single house that called? They have to have some discretion. They have to be able to judge whether or not the call is legitimate or not. And that means sometimes they're going to make a mistake and the police don't arrive. But that is better than sending the police to every single person every single time that someone prank calls the police department. So there has to be that judgment. And then it comes to things like knowledge or cooperation or attendance. Your attendance is basically your health. You're there because either your place of work is incredibly toxic and you don't feel like being there because it's just hard. So these are all things that essentially the employer controls. They can have better tools for you that make your understanding it more obvious, simpler. As far as cooperation, this really has a lot to do with how you're set up. I've been set up in call centers where we're crammed in like sardines, and we all have to be really quiet because everything you say comes up on your coworker's call. Everything is about the employer, which means that the whole employee performance review, and worse yet, the self-review. I have never given myself anything less than the absolute best. Best marks in every case. I don't mark myself down at all, because I am always trying to do my best, and that might not be perfect. That might not be the greatest thing ever, and maybe someone else is doing better than I am, but I am always doing my best, and that's what I'm being asked to do, and that's what I have to trust and believe in is the right thing to do. And if in fact someone is outshining me, doing really great, if somehow I am falling behind, well, that too is, as a manager, I've worked with people who did struggle. So that's part of the employer's job. You only hire this person because you saw the potential in them to do the job and do it well. And perhaps the struggling that they have is not a problem with them, but a problem with the job, a problem with the way the job is being done. And if you start giving them and listening to their feedback about it, there might be actually something to improve in this process. So just going through to you need to do what you are told, it's just a terrible workplace experience for both the employee and the employer. Everyone is always doing the best that they can do, and marking someone up or down or sideways because of these other ideas is really more of a revealing the failing of the employer and the area in which you're in. I have participated, I've given many different performance reviews. One of my performance reviews I reviewed with a fellow manager, so it's two of us. And I reviewed and she reviewed. And my reviews were super high. I thought everyone was doing great. And her reviews were much lower. And she's like, well, no, you can't give people perfect scores. That doesn't work. Let's mark this down. No, not a 5. Let's just make that a 3.5. It's always just fudging the numbers and coming up with some random, fictional thing. When none of it's really helpful. It doesn't accomplish anything for the employer other than perhaps to make people a little bit more okay with not getting what they think they should get, which goes into the workplace being either not transparent or unfair. So if you're not as an employment agency, or rather as an employer, there's this side. I've had a employer who the company couldn't see to offering proper benefits to the employees, but the boss, the CEO, was happy to tell us how well his home renovations were going. He actually had an elevator installed in his house. He had completely redone the entire thing, and he invited us out for a Christmas party. Lavish spread. So it's all about this concept of greed of how the employer benefits from giving you these silly reviews that try to lower your expectations so that you are going to cut into their home renovations a little less. So don't take performance evaluation seriously. Just, think of Superman sitting there getting read the riot act because he hasn't exceeded expectations.